A man walks into a bar, proposes to the first girl he sees, she says yes, they get married and live happily ever after. Marriage at first sight might make for great reality TV, but it makes for a terrible advertising campaign for your customers. If all of your ads revolve solely around getting people to buy right now, then you're putting all of your eggs into the one small basket of people who are happy to marry you at first sight. And you're ignoring all of the green fields of potentially higher quality leads who would be happy to buy from your brand if only they had a bit more time to get to know you better. I'm Adam Sugihto, and this is Intentional Advertising. If we're talking about advertising that gets customers to buy right now, then we're pretty much talking about high return on ad spend or high ROAS advertising. We need ROAS. We need to know that money we're investing into advertising is translating into sales. And a high ROAS means that we're getting a lot of bang for our buck. What could be wrong with that? For the first 5 years of our agency, we ran on ROAS. ROAS was the number that we reported to clients, and it was a number that internally we lived and died by. If ROAS was up, it was a great month and a party for all. And if ROAS was down, it was like a punch in the guts and we'd want to crawl into a hole. ROAS is important and has its place, and we still use it, but we no longer live or die by it. As recovering ROAS addicts, we've seen that an unhealthy fixation on ROAS actually distracts us and our clients from some other far more important numbers. Essentially a case of missing the forest for the trees. If this sounds familiar, you too may be a ROAS addict. And if that's the case, here are 3 things that we might just throw your way to see if clinging too tightly to ROAS is maybe preventing you from seeing the bigger picture. As you probably already know, high ROAS segments are found right at the bottom of the marketing funnel or close to the buying decision. In digital, we're talking mainly about branded search, remarketing, and sometimes some unbranded search here. These are people who already know you, are ready to buy, and practically you just need to make sure that you don't do anything to get in the way of the sale. This kind of high ROAS campaigns or high ROAS advertising is a staple of all digital advertising, and you should definitely make the most of this low-hanging fruit. The problem is though that not all of our segments that we're targeting are at the bottom of the funnel. As we target further away from a buying decision or further up the marketing funnel, ROAS is naturally going to fall away. So the closer to the bottom of the funnel we're targeting, or the closer to a buying decision, the higher the ROAS, and the further away from a buying decision, or the further up the marketing funnel, the lower the ROAS. Measuring upper funnel segments to the same ROAS yardstick as lower funnel segments, then cutting them off when they don't perform, is like being disappointed when someone doesn't marry you at first sight. We just really shouldn't be holding both of these very, very different segments to the same expectation. So the natural consequence of accepting only high ROAS advertising is that you're choking the top and a lot of the middle of your marketing funnel, essentially throttling the reach of your brand and the exposure that you have amongst your target market. If this is the case, then there are probably blue oceans of customers who would be very interested to buy what it is that you have, if only they, 1, knew that you existed, and 2, were allowed just a little bit more time to get to know you better. In one of the great showdowns of advertising, 2 of the leading but opposing voices, Mark Ritson and Byron, recently held a one-on-one debate in front of a room full of 5,000 advertisers who would then vote on the outcome of the night. In the blue corner, Mark Ritson argued for tight positioning, segmenting, targeting, essentially for high performance and high ROAS. And in the red corner, Byron argued for brand building and mass reach. So who won on the night? Mark or Byron? Performance or brand building? ROAS or reach? Well, Mark won on the night, but a year later, he personally conceded his crown over to Byron thanks to a UK IPA advertising effectiveness study that was based on 30 years of data, over 700 brands in over 80 categories. You'll be pleased to know though that common sense prevailed from the study and neither ROAS or reach is the right answer, and that this isn't a case of either or, but it's a case of both and. Brands need ROAS for short-term sales, short-term activations, but this can't come at the expense of longer-term brand building. So the fact that advertisers need both performance and brand building wasn't really that much of a surprise. The real surprise of the IPA study was that the data showed that there was an ideal advertising ratio between performance and brand building, between ROAS and mass reach. So before I share the ideal ratio between performance and brand building in any advertising spend, what do you think the number should be? What's the number that you have in your head? Let me give you a few seconds to think about it. What do you think is the ideal ratio in any given advertising spend between performance and ROAS-based campaigns versus longer-term brand building campaigns? I'll give you a few seconds to think about it. Okay, are you ready? Do you have the number in your head? Well, it turns out from the study that the ideal proportion of ad spend for both effective and efficient brands over the long term is that 40% of your ad spend should be going towards ROAS and short-term performance, and 60% of your ad spend should be going to longer-term brand building. You might balk at that ratio, and of course, the numbers are going to be slightly different for every brand. And the purpose of this video isn't to say immediately go now and change your marketing mix. But the takeaway here is that if you're only accepting high ROAS campaigns, then your brand isn't being set up for the long term. It's important to remember that ROAS is just one number. It is an important number, but it's just one number. And the thing is, it's not even a hard number in and of itself. ROAS is a derived number or a derivative. The two numbers that ROAS is derived from are revenue and ad spend. And so when you divide one by the other, you get a percentage. And as the saying goes, you can't eat a percentage, but you can eat revenue. So it's possible to have a lower ROAS yet drive more revenue. And so it's important to remember that ROAS may be a great signpost. It might let you know how well or how efficiently your revenue is being earned, but ultimately your goal is not ROAS, your goal is revenue. Of course, we're not talking about accepting lower ROAS because your agency is lazy, and we're not saying lower your ROAS into unprofitability for your brand. So clearly you need to guard against those things. But let's run a hypothetical example and say that you are running a few campaigns that you're happy with. Let's say you're targeting a 5x ROAS, and let's say you're happy with the profitability, you're happy with the revenue, but you just can't seem to find enough buyers at 5x. So you'll likely find that if you introduce some middle of the funnel campaigns that can warm up a much larger pool of audiences, and if you relaxed your ROAS requirement from say 5x to maybe 4x or 3.5x, that even though you have a lower ROAS, you might actually find that you're driving more revenue. So the takeaway here is, assuming you've done all that you can on your bottom of the funnel, if all you're doing is accepting high ROAS, more than likely you're leaving some good money on the table. So in this video, we've learned that an unhealthy fixation on high ROAS campaigns, number one, throttles your reach, reducing your brand's exposure to your target market. Number two, causes you to play the short-term game at the expense of long-term brand building. And number three, for the sake of reporting on a high percentage ROAS figure, means more than likely you're leaving some good revenue on the table. So what now? What can we do with this kind of information? Well, if you have a search account, Google now includes a performance planner where you can see what would happen if you were to either tighten or loosen your conversion requirements, essentially adjust your ROAS expectations up or down. So here you can find out the relationship between ROAS and revenue, and you can find out where your brand actually sits on that spectrum. So why don't you go into your account today, have a look and see, are you leaving some good revenue on the table because you're being too demanding on ROAS? There's no equivalent of the performance planner for display-based advertising like YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So for these kinds of display channels, you're going to need to use a different set of tools. Tools like the search list study or the sales list study that is not available in the interface itself, but is available through the Google Premier Partners Program and the Facebook Marketing Partners Program. So if you'd like some help with that, feel free to contact myself and the team. We've got a link in the description below and we can give you a hand with that. As a footnote, if you're looking to do a deeper dive into the advertising ratios of performance versus brand building, highly recommend watching the YouTube of Mark Ritson following up his debate with Byron Sharp 1 year later. So in that YouTube video, he outlines the IPA effectiveness study and takes a lot of data from it. It's called The Long and the Short of It. So I'll include a link to both the YouTube and the study in the show notes below. Definitely check it out. Hi, I'm Adam Sugihto. Thanks for watching this video. Do you feel that if your advertising stayed the way it is, that your best days are ahead? Are you going to just watch as the market keeps eating into your margins without putting up a fight? If you're here to learn, click on that subscribe button to get more video content from the team. But if it's time to take action, click on the link in the description box below and get in touch with the team at Intentional. We're here to help you convert potential.